Welcome, everybody. It's been a while since I've been on our podcast, and I feel bad for that. I was fucked with my work schedule, but I'm back, and we are on episode 41. This past weekend, I let the government inject their 5Gs of vaccine into my arm, so I now have a 5G network running through my system. In other words, also in other things and topics, baseball season has begun. It's full go. The world is spinning. It must not actually be flat, like Kyrie Irving once said. And the Masters golf tournament is next weekend, so life is good, right? Alex, beard game strong, life is good. How you doing?
I'm great. Yeah, it's a fantastic time to be a sports fan right now. Baseball has started. Hockey and basketball are coming down the stretch here. The women just finished their tournament. The men finish it tomorrow. And yeah, the Masters are next weekend. Like literally everything's going on except for football pretty much. So yeah, I'm doing great.
Yeah, that is true. Things like I always say are flourishing. And so with Alex beard game strong, Tradon beard game wrong because he is fully baby face right now, fully shaved. And I saw you a couple of days ago, and you didn't look like that. But how you doing, Tradon?
I'm doing well. Yeah, I mean, you guys said it. Sports are going like crazy. It seems like. I mean, we went to a baseball game this weekend. James and I went to an actual baseball game, like actually watched people play a sport live. Not behind the damn screens. That was awesome. And the Angels won, so that is a double whammy there.
Yeah.
And I drank a lot of alcohol, which is always fun.
Yeah. Tradon said he was giving up alcohol for Lent, and we're with him on Friday. We get to our first brewery, and he sees me and James drinking a beer, and then he's just like, I think I said seltzers, not beer. So then he just started drinking beer. So he may be going to hell, everybody, but it's okay. James, how you doing, man? I know you were pumped to go to this Angels game, and live fans are back, even in LA soon. Not yet, but soon.
Oh, dude, that game was amazing. Tradon's right. I drank a lot of alcohol. He drank a lot of alcohol. So did you on Friday. Also drank a lot of alcohol.
Yeah.
Learned how to play backgammon in my car. That was a lot of fun while drinking a beer. Good call, Tradon. Good call on the beer, Eric. But this weekend was great. Good time to relax, drink some beers with some buddies, and go to a baseball game. And by the way, Hulu has live sports.
Yeah, no free ads.
Sponsor, yeah.
But backgammon, I still don't get that game. I just would highlight a whatever those are pieces, and just it would tell me where to move them, and then trade and be like, "Ooh, great move," and I'd be like, "Yeah, exactly." Everybody, Tyler is not with us this episode. I believe he's working, or it's Easter Sunday, or both. But we're here grinding for you guys Easter Sunday, mainly because of me. Actually, it's mainly my fault. But a quick little breaking news: Shohei Ohtani currently pitching in the Angels game, and in the first inning, he hit a solo home run. They showed a stat that hasn't happened since the designated hitter position was created in the American League in 1973. Huge stat for you guys. We're big stat guys. We do the facts. But we want to get right into the relevant sports going on. And Alex is going to start us off tonight with the NBA like he always does. He's got some hot fire to spit for us. Right, Alex?
That is true. So before we kind of get into it, two things. Congratulations to the women's Stanford team. They won the women's tournament just like an hour and a half ago, beating the 3-seed Arizona women's team. It was a close game. I think it was 54-53. Arizona had a shot at the end. It was a terrible shot. It was, I mean, if you like watch it was just, they poorly executed the last play of the game. But congratulations to Stanford. And then tomorrow night, Monday night, we've got Baylor and Gonzaga playing after Gonzaga hit a buzzer beater.
Yeah, holy
to
shit.
beat UCLA last night.
There's no way in hell that they lose. There's no way in hell.
No way.
How did we forget to mention this in the beginning? Yeah. Holy fuck.
So, yeah, that was insane as well. Well, fantasy wise, we're still kind of going on right now. Like the games are still going. But I update us as always. Yours truly is going to win again. Obviously, I don't really know why that's even the debate. Tyler is destroying this week, so he's going to get a win. James is also going to get a win, and Tradon going to possibly squeak out a win over your fiance.
Yes,
Love that.
Ooh.
So Tradon's got some trash talking at home, so that's
Yes,
pretty
sir.
good. And then one last thing before we get into like actual NBA stuff, guys. Space Jam 2 trailer dropped. Did you watch it?
No.
I haven't seen it yet. No.
No,
Okay, well, I don't know why I brought it up because none of these fuckers watched it. So never mind.
I bet it was cool though.
Later.
Was it cool?
It was pretty cool, and it's got just like Space Jam 1. It's got cameos from current players in both the NBA and the WNBA. So give that a check out. It probably won't be as good as the first one, but
Is the sequel ever better than the original, though?
There's very few exceptions.
Very few.
That could be a whole segment's worth.
Yeah, I feel like that
of information.
Eric, you got it, man.
Stretch, yeah.
That feels like a whole different thing. Okay, let's get into current NBA stuff that's going on. I feel like we talk about him a lot, but Joel Embiid is back for the Philadelphia 76ers. He missed about 3 to 4 weeks with a bone bruise in his knee. I've taken 2 anatomy classes, so I'm pretty much a doctor. But I'm 90% sure that bone bruises are still hurt after like 3 or 4 weeks. So, Eric, what do you think? What can we expect from Joel Embiid coming back? With probably lasting pain and injury, kind of woes in that knee.
Yeah, you are actually right. Bone bruises do hurt a lot, and they do kind of linger too. But it seems to be common sense, but I feel like he's going to start out slow. Normally, they're going to throw him on a little bit of minute restrictions. I don't know how big Doc Rivers is with that from past experience, if he listens to the sports scientists when they talk about minute restrictions, but nonetheless, he will be on some minute restrictions. But he's going to be a huge help for them, of course. And looking at his stats, 30 points per game, 11 rebounds per game, 3 assists per game. But what I'm thinking is he's probably going to have more assists because he's going to be a little winded getting his game back. And I feel like he's going to post up and they're going to try to do ISO stuff with him. And if he gets all tired, he's just going to pass it back to somebody, maybe to Tobias Harris or one of their shooters. But it's really good timing for them. They actually, withheld and stood up against a lot of teams during the time he's been gone. They're still in a good spot. And, these upcoming games, they got Celtics, Pelicans, Thunder, Mavs, and Brooklyn Nets. So they're going to need him for that stretch. There's about 22 games left in the season. So I think he's coming back just enough time to dial it back in for them.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of speaking on the, conditioning part, that's something Joel Embiid has been criticized for in the past. I mean, he's a big boy, he's 7 feet tall, 280 probably. So working his way back in, it's going to take some time. And you're right. They held up without him. He was the front runner for the MVP when he went down, and they've held up without him. It does kind of help. They play in the East, and there's really only 3 teams I feel like that have a legitimate shot. It's those top 3 teams, the Bucks, the Nets, and Joel Embiid 76ers. But you're right. Tobias Harris has been amazing with Joel gone. And their defense should get better, and it will be fun to watch him, down the road for the rest of the season here. Moving on.
Real fast.
Yeah, go for it.
So bone bruises hurt, and you guys had mentioned before that the Sixers are doing well without Embiid. So do you think that they should have waited to play Embiid until he's fully 100%, no pain at all, before putting him back out there? Because they're rolling right now.
No. I feel like they're professional sports teams. I would assume that their team doctors are pretty intelligent. And as long as Joel Embiid is telling them the truth and saying, it's a manageable pain, and, they watch him on the court and, he played well in his first game back, then no, I think you play him and get him back into shape for this stretch run. They're going to want the best seating possible. in the East so they can avoid those other two teams as much as they possibly can. So I see your point, but I would assume if he's healthy enough to play, they're going to play him.
Yeah, I mean, they would have to play like the Celtics first round if they kind of slip down, or
yeah, it depends on whoever comes out of that play-in tournament.
It's all that
play. Yeah, true. But either way, it'd probably be better off for them to just to dial in with him back in the lineup so they're ready. But yeah, I mean, it is a concern. It could be like a little bit of a trial and error thing. See how he is that first game. If it fucks with him, then take him out again.
Is that an injury that you can rush early and it be an issue down the road?
Oh yeah, compensation patterns.
Yeah, it would not surprise me if he played like 50% of the games. Like one game on, one game off, one game on, one game off down the road.
Yeah, they'll wind him into it.
Yeah, they're gonna. Yeah. That's a good question, James. Okay, moving on. I specifically saw this report, and my first thought was Tradon. So and then it worked out well because I brought this up, and we had a nice discussion about it in our little text group. But there's this report going on that during the All-Star break weekend, LeBron, he picked Steph to be on his All-Star team, and there were conversations that LeBron was trying to convince Steph to come to LA after next season. So Steph can sign an extension this offseason to play up until age 38 with the Warriors. It's a shit ton of money. He'd probably take a little bit less if he did that to, help the Warriors bring in some other, veteran players. But after the Celtics big three and the Miami big three, the NBA has been so star driven. And I know, Tradon, you are a Warriors fan, and I know Kylie is a Warriors fan. So what do you think about this LeBron Steph team up? LeBron would be 37, 38 at that point. Steph 34, 35, something like that.
I don't know what I hate more, the idea of them teaming up or the source of the information. ESPN's Brian Windhorst is the one who brought this up on his podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And he has zero credibility, zero evidence that this was even a thing. It's completely out of the air bullshit to make a story. Dude, if you're struggling that much for viewers or listeners, do something else because you're doing it wrong. We do this all the time where we just like throw up some random clickbait bullshit. That's all of our lives are surrounded by. This is just another one of those. Does anybody on this podcast honestly think that Steph Curry would even think to go team up with LeBron in LA? Seriously? No. This is like a 0%.
I would give it like 15%.
I would say it's maybe 1%. There's a better chance that LeBron goes to Golden State than
I disagree with that 100%.
Then Steph Curry goes to LA.
No, LeBron's trying to. No, okay. Finish your point, and then
I actually let me just interrupt, like I always do. I actually could, if that were to ever happen, I could see LeBron going to the Warriors, joining Klay Thompson, Steph.
No way.
And yeah, dude, they were trying to land Giannis this year. It didn't work out. I mean, fill the spot.
LeBron is at the end of his career, and he's going to stay with a star, like a historical franchise. He's not going to go to a franchise that isn't historically.
Right,
like the best of the best. The Lakers are the best of the best.
With all that said, there's no way that he's gonna leave all that money on the table and go to the LA. He is gonna stay he's gonna stay and die a Warrior. There's no way that the Warriors franchise will let him go away. To answer your question before, what do I think of the team up? This whole league, and we said this on our text thing. This league is broken. Like that's all this league is about is teaming up and doing this whole thing. And here's the thing, like I actually appreciate the fact that players make it to free agency and get the ability and deserve the ability to choose where they go. I'm actually for that. That said, it has kind of ruined the game in that, like that's all. If your big three isn't better than the other team's big three, you're not going to win. And that's just not how a sport that I grew up playing is like, where your bottom six can make a huge difference down the stretch. So it just seems like it's just going to be another Brooklyn Nets. You guys said it on the text. Did I said this league is going to be broken, and you guys made the point that it already is broken. Well, yeah. So do you want to make it even more? I think it's cool on paper. Like it's cool to hear, these two guys team up. They did at All-Star break, which was pretty interesting. I just think I just think it's not. It just doesn't lend itself to much parity in the league. That's my issue with it.
Yeah. Okay. So the parity in the NBA is long gone. I mean, it's just there's the top heavy teams, and there's realistically, this year maybe 6 teams that could win it, assuming the Lakers get healthy. If not 5 teams that could win the championship realistically. And I mean, as a fan of both of those players, I think it'd be super fun if they played together. They're probably the 2 most important players in the last 2 decades in basketball. And speaking of LeBron going to Golden State, 0% chance that would ever happen. Part of his whole move to LA was because he wanted to get into Hollywood. I mean, he's obviously in this, starring in Space Jam 2. He's been in other movies. He wants to kind of ingrain himself in that Southern California culture. And so I just can't see him doing that.
I agree. I'm talking a 0 versus a 0.1% chance.
I still think
0% chance that Steph goes to LA, and there's a 0.1% chance that LeBron goes to Golden State. It's not going to happen.
I think it's at least 0.2 after they were down by 61 points to the Raptors last night. I want Steph to finish his career as a Warrior. He was, I've never been a Warriors fan, but being a Kobe fan, seeing what Dirk did in Dallas, like that type of thing is so rare now. Jeter with the Yankees. That in any sport, we just saw Tom Brady after whatever 22 seasons or whatever it was with the Patriots move on. So I hope he stays, but I also kind of want to see him play with LeBron. So I'm kind of torn. Okay, and then go ahead.
No, I said I feel that. I don't know. Yeah. It's an interesting topic, and
I think it'd be cool. Moving on. So 2 veteran players have signed 10-day contracts. Isaiah Thomas and DeMarcus Cousins. We talked about Boogie a while ago, and he has just been out there forever. So Isaiah Thomas is signing with the New Orleans Pelicans, and then Boogie is signing with the Clippers. James, which one of these guys will stick around past those 10 days, or will make a bigger impact on their team?
I think this is the easiest question you've ever asked me, to be honest with you. Tradon, real fast. This is just a segue kind of thing. But do you know who Isaiah Thomas is?
Yes.
Is that like a confident yes? Or
definitely not a confident. Like I heard the name before.
Okay. So that's the biggest thing. Isaiah Thomas has not played in the NBA as a big name since 2016. He's been kind of in and out doing his thing. Last played at the Wizards. His last game was February 2020. And that was when he was playing with the Wizards. Isaiah Thomas was an MVP runner in 2016 when he was with the Celtics. He came out of nowhere and put up 28 points per game and 10. He averaged a double-double, and he's this 5'7" dude, super explosive, does his thing, and he was fun to watch. But then injuries happened, and Isaiah Thomas since then has not been able to bring up that level of play. I honestly think he's just signing with the Pelicans for this 10-day contract because they need depth. They have 7 guys on injured reserve right now. They're not healthy. The biggest hit to them was Josh Hart, who just went on IR he's going to be gone for a significant amount of time. So I think Isaiah Thomas will stay past that 10-day contract, but once he's going to be buried in the depth chart once Josh Hart gets back. And in the meantime, he's going to come off the bench and put up 5-6 minutes a game, nothing crazy. Isaiah Thomas is nothing like he was before, and it sucks because he was a cool story. The biggest part about that is that he had a hip injury, and for how small he is, he has to rely on his athleticism. He has to rely on his footwork and his explosiveness. He can't do that with a bad hip. That's why he's gotten so much worse. DeMarcus Cousins, on the other hand, he's shown and proven that he can play at a high level still. With the Rockets, before he decided to cut ties with the team, he was averaging a double-double. He can still play. DeMarcus Cousins' injuries were serious injuries, but because of modern medicine, they don't pose that much of a threat to somebody's career anymore. An ACL and Achilles, yeah, it takes a year to recover from each, but then when you get back, you'll be fine. And that's been proven. I mean, KD does it. Clay's going to come back and do the same thing. DeMarcus Cousins will be fine. He's playing at a high level right now. And the coolest part about this is that he's playing with Rondo again. Rondo just got signed by the Clippers, and back in the day when they were on the Pelicans, Rondo brought out the best in DeMarcus Cousins, and I think that's going to be the same thing that happens here. The Clippers need physicality on the inside, and that's exactly what DeMarcus Cousins bring. Serge Ibaka is kind of soft, not going to lie. And Zubac is a big baby. Sorry, Eric. You need some physicality on the inside, somebody who can't be moved, somebody who's mean, and that's DeMarcus Cousins. And I think he's definitely going to finish out the season with the Clippers, and he's going to produce a high level.
Okay. I do agree with you. I think, obviously the Clippers are a title contender. I said on the podcast last week that I thought the Clippers were the favorites to come out of the West now. But to your point, we haven't really seen, he was averaging a double-double off the bench for the Rockets, but we haven't seen DeMarcus Cousins since those days with the Pelicans, which I think was also 2016. And he's a 7-footer.
But he doesn't have to be that now.
He doesn't have to, but those are both major injuries to your lower extremities that he has to deal with. I like Boogie.
He has a good sports medicine staff in the Clippers. Come on, you got Eric right there. Like you got
Eric right there.
I just healed him.
There we go.
I would like to see him succeed. He's been through a rough couple of years. He did technically get a championship ring last year, sort of as a part of the Lakers. So, and they lost the year before that.
Oh,
that was the year they lost to the Raptors. So I think they'll probably both finish out the seasons on their respective teams, but Boogie will make more of an impact. And I like the Rondo pairing. I didn't even think about that. But I think what Rondo brings to the Clippers is going to be more important than what Boogie brings to the Clippers. But finishing off some Clipper talk, which means, Eric, I'm all done with basketball this week. A little shorter since there's just the four of us, but I'm all done.
Yeah. One other, that was great, Alex. That was really good insight. And we had a lot of questions too that we covered there. One last random thing. Boogie Cousins, we witnessed him just rupture his quad chasing a basketball when the Clippers played the Warriors in the playoffs that year. But, that's besides the point. So he has had a big injury history. But, I think hopefully he could be okay with that. And as well as his side of off the court is what people talk about too. So hopefully that is better. But we're going to take a break and we're going to get right back into the next sport that's currently going, which is the NHL with our hockey guy Tradon when we come back. We are back, everybody, and we are continuing with the relevant sports that are currently going on. We're going to be talking the NHL with our hockey guy Tradon. Tradon, what are the goings-ons in the NHL right now?
Yes. Well, before I get into it, I have to go through the fantasy just like Alex does with the basketball. I am going to beat Kylie because I'm actually playing her in that as well.
Ooh, good week for you.
Yeah, it's a very good week for me. Alex, you are going to destroy Tyler, which probably makes you very happy.
Yeah, fuck him.
Eric, you kicked James's ass.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. And yeah, so it's kind of funny. We all played each other. Besides me playing Kylie, but we all played each other, which is always fun. I guess that's gonna come down the wire. I think the playoffs are gonna be coming up pretty soon, like the playoffs for the fantasy, and I'm probably not even in it, so it probably doesn't even matter anymore. That said, the NHL is in its last week before the trade deadline. And we had that trade deadline discussion last week. So I wonder if any of our, predictions or ideas are going to come into fruition. There hasn't been much on the trading front. I just don't think there's going to be much on the trading front as much as we'd like, just given the way the world we live in right now. There's not much money these teams have. No teams want to spend money. This COVID year has kind of threw a wrench in everything. It's definitely a buyer's market. So if a team wants a player, they probably can get him for a pretty good price. And speaking of players that, might need to be replaced, the big one, Aaron Ekblad of the Florida Panthers suffered a brutal and sad injury. I saw it, and it's gut wrenching. It's heartbreaking for that guy. He's a huge part of that Florida Panthers team, and it was just an unfortunate. I don't even know, just a freak accident. But the Panthers have been a hot team this season, and they lost, their star defenseman, probably their best defenseman. I guess, Alex, I wanted you to take a look at this. How do you think this affects their trade deadline decisions? And how do you feel about the team going forward without their main guy, Ekblad, back there?
Yeah, so that sucks. That sucks. It also sucks because he was on my fantasy team, and I had to make different plans. That's a really tough question to ask right now, since they just won 6 games in a row and currently have the most points in the National Hockey League as we talk. So I think if they had, gone, how many games has he missed now? Like 3 or 4?
He's missed 4.
Something like, okay, 4 games. Say they had lost all 4 of those games without him, I think they would have been much more like an immediate aggressiveness to get another defenseman. But because they're on this hot streak, maybe they don't need it right now. Like I think long term, by long term I mean like the rest of the season, the other guys on that defensive defense is going to have to step up, because obviously he's probably their best defensive player.
Right.
I was gonna say they could maybe be looking at Matthias Ekholm. I know he's a left-handed shot, Ekblad's a right-handed shot. But now the Preds have started playing well, and they've gotten themselves back into a playoff spot. So now I'm not sure that the Preds are going to sell. That was the guy that came to mind immediately.
Mm-hmm.
But because they're playing so well right now, I don't think they're going to do anything unless they can get, Ekblad's maybe not, he's not Victor Hedman. He's not, some legit, like crazy defenseman, but he's very solid. So I don't think they're going to do anything. Devastating injury.
I will ask you this. Of the 6 games that they've won the last 4 without him have been between the Red Wings and the Blue Jackets, who have been playing very shitty. Do you think that has anything, like, they're about to play the Hurricanes, who are a legit team in this league? So do you think maybe these next 2 games are really going to determine, maybe more so than if they should do anything, before that deadline?
Yeah. And I think so. And I think a lot of these teams are going to, just like the NBA trade deadline, it's going to be the day of the deadline, hours and minutes to the deadline is when people are going to make those deals. Because this season is so weird, everyone needs to figure out as much information as they possibly can on their own team and players they're targeting.
Right.
So if they go, if they lose these next 2 games, that could definitely change things. But at least, they're beating the teams they're supposed to beat.
True.
So it's so tough. I don't know. I think they probably won't do anything anyway.
Right.
But
I see
they
get out of the first round. Obviously, they're going to the playoffs, right? Or did they get out of the first round?
I think it depends on the matchup, but I think they can. I think they've been playing so hot this season. It depends on who they would play. So like, who would they
be either
right now? They'd play Nashville.
I mean, unless they're first, they would get Nashville. It's either Carolina or Nashville, right?
Yeah.
Tampa,
because Tampa could. If they play Nashville, yes. If they play Carolina, no. There you go. That's my answer.
I like that. So they really need to get in first, is what you're telling me.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, I think a lot of these teams, to your point, are just going to come down to what's going to happen. Like, because all the points are in the division, we just saw what Nashville's done, and all of a sudden they're in 4th. I just said that in my power rankings, that I haven't talked about this team at all this season on my power rankings list, and then finally I get to, because they had a nice game winning streak. So to your point, I think that teams are going to wait to the very end, because all the points are in the divisions, and it's a shortened season, and you just don't want to give up something where you might actually have a chance to make some noise.
Yeah.
All that said, I still think that, goaltending is still something I question. Bobrovsky needs to play a little bit better. I just don't think he's been the elite guy. It's been Drager that's been kind of their guy. But I think you're right. I think it's going to depend on, these next 2 games are probably biggest indicators of what they're going to do going forward.
Yeah.
moving on to a team that actually just played the Florida Panthers and lost twice back to back. The Columbus Blue Jackets. They have been quite bad. I mean, last weekend they were noted to have a very low energy, low effort type of play, and I guess that's kind of continuing this week. James, I asked you to take a look at this one. What do you think is driving this team's lack of effort, lack of energy, and this is a good team, right? Like what's kind of driving this weak play?
I think it's definitely Torts.
That answers my question later.
There it is. His coaching style is confrontational. Mm-hmm. They yell at you, scream at you, hardly ever tell you when you do something right.
Yeah.
When you're winning, that's okay. Because when you're winning, you can get yelled at, but you see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's like, I'm getting yelled at, I'm taking all this abuse, but we're winning, so that means it's paying off, it means it's working. When you're losing, it's just downright detrimental. It makes you question your will to want to play hockey. It makes you want to not play anymore. It's like, you're yelling at me, tell me something I'm doing right for once. Like, make me feel better, up my morale a little bit. But no, right now it's just abusive. That's probably the wrong word, but you get the point. You get the picture.
I get it.
Yeah. Torts moves teams every about 5 to 7 years, and this is his 6th year in Columbus, so it's about time that he moves on and goes to a new team. That's how long people can tolerate him and his antics and his coaching style. Any longer than that, he gets overblown. You leave the team, start over somewhere new. When it's new ears, it's a different thing. But when it's the same people getting yelled at for the same thing all the time without winning, it's not a good recipe for success. And that, I'm not saying Torts is a bad coach, because Torts is a damn good coach, but his coaching style gets overused a little too much, and it's not good for the team. On the flip side, Torts he probably won't change his coaching style, but if he gives a good job every once in a while, give somebody a high five, show some love, maybe this entire morale will change. But I doubt that.
That would be so unlike him. I guess my question, so I guess you kind of answered it. Do you think this is his last stint in Columbus there?
Yeah, man, last 20 games ish.
Wow.
Got a random question.
Yeah.
Who's a better press conference post-game coach, Torts or Daryl Sutter?
That is the greatest question ever. They're just so different, right? Like one is just very cold humor, right? Like Daryl Sutter calling out, slyly calling out Johnny Gaudreau was amazing, and then Torts just won't handle any bullshit questions. Like he just throws it right back in your face. So I can't really choose, because it just depends on what kind of feeling you want. Do you want some dry, smart ass remark, or do you want a kind of a fuck you?
I feel like Torts is like Belichick and Popovich, where he's just like, fuck this is dumb, I don't want to do this.
Yeah, I definitely think you're right on that. That's a great question. But going back to what you said, James, I think you're right. I think this is it for Torts. This team is just not playing well. Interestingly, I didn't know how the trade with Laine would turn out. It has been an absolute disaster, and the biggest thing is he's an RFA after this year. So they have to figure out, they have his rights, so they have to figure out what they're going to do with him. If they have a new coach, they probably can make that work, right? I don't think he can work under Torts. I think I said that last time.
How many good players has Torts pushed out of his teams?
Yes.
A lot, right?
Yes.
And the issue.
Yes.
How many? Yes.
Well, here's the issue. Columbus has always had a problem with retaining players and playing stars as it is. And then to your point, he's already pushed 2 players. You could actually, I can't even count on one hand, because you can throw in
Duchesne.
Yeah, you could throw in Duchesne.
But Duchesne's also kind of like a Laine, from what.
I would say that Laine and Pierre-Luc Dubois and Duchesne to an extent are a little bit on the soft side, but it also doesn't help when you're a complete asshole, to James's point. So
Yeah.
Tradon, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
With it in regards to Torts again. So he's won one cup, and that was in 2004.
Yeah, with the
Tampa Bay Lightning. So it's been almost 2 decades. If he's let go from Columbus, like, does anyone want him? Like, he's got a iffy reputation, I would say. Like,
yeah.
But like, he's not proved himself to be like this amazing coach.
No.
I mean, he's only won 1 cup.
He's only won 1 cup. He does have decent stats in terms of wins. He does have the tendency to take over a team, and then for the first like couple years, they're really good. Like kind of bring like a team that I would think about is looking up what, Calgary has issues where they're not, buying in and actually, giving not effort's not the right word, but showing some sort of, drive to play. And it's because they had a coach that was so soft. It's on the other flip side, they're the complete opposite. Now they got Daryl Sutter, and he's starting to kind of button it up a little bit. He's going to go to a team like that needs some sort of adjustment. I think that he does need to learn a bit. I don't know where he goes. I really don't. I think he was in Vancouver, and I think he was that coach that made it to the finals against Boston, but don't quote me on that. So he's made it far. He just hasn't been able to finish.
Yeah. Okay.
I also would argue that a lot of the teams that he's played for are teams that are notorious for not being able to retain stars. Columbus never has been able to retain stars. I don't know if it's the city. I don't know if it's the organization outside of the coaching. I don't know what that is. So it's a little bit tough to, if he goes to Tampa Bay, that everyone and the grandma wants to go to Tampa Bay, right? So I think it's a tough question. But I think that he'll find a job. He's a good coach, but his reputation is on the line. I think to your point.
Okay, cool.
My final topic last week is kind of interesting. So Tim Peel, he's a veteran ref, and he's been a ref in this league for a very, very long time. He was handed in early retirement. Basically, he got fired for the rest of the season. He was supposed to retire at the end of the season and finish out his time, but he got let go within hours of a hot mic catching him basically saying that he was trying to find, like, he called a pretty shitty tripping call against Nashville in the game, and on the mic he's like, I was basically looking for a makeup call for what happened earlier in the game. Like they gave Detroit a shitty penalty, so he was trying to find a makeup call to kind of balance it out. And everyone knows that the game is kind of called like that. Like refs are trying to manage the game and have these makeup calls. We've just never heard it from a ref's voice or from a ref's mouth. And we did. And the NHL was very quick to just poo that and get him out. Kind of unlike the NHL. Usually they do a little bit of investigation. So, Eric, I asked you to take a look at this. First of all, what do you think of the firing? Like, do you think it was justified, or do you think, we should have a little bit more perspective? I guess I'll start with that.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't think they should have fired him on the spot. I think like maybe they give him a 10-game sussy or something, and like learn, like you said, the NHL world, the refs do manage the game, and they go like tick for tack with the calls. Sometimes there's good calls, sometimes there's bad, but they try to even them out so it's not one-sided. But yeah, I mean, it didn't help that he was mic'd up, and the way he said it too, like, yeah, the wording just sounded bad, like the wording made it sound like he was almost like cheating. Yeah. But I don't think that was the case. So I don't think they should have fired him. I think it should have been like what is there, 20 games left in the season, that like half of those you're not going to ref, and you need to learn from this, and like maybe they restrict a few playoff games from him too or something. But I don't think they should have fired him on the spot. But yeah.
It's a tough one too. And I guess before I retort, I want to ask you, like, what is your kind of ideal game in terms of how calls should be made? I mean, there's some in one camp that say call the rule book no matter what. And then I'll give you some issues why that, might be an issue. And then there's others that say, you just got to kind of manage the game. We don't want to see a power play throughout the entire game. We want to see 5-on-5. What is your what would you like to see in terms of, how a game is called?
I like the way it currently is, actually, the manage the game style. I think if it switched to like off the book, you know what it would turn into, Tradon? And this may make you just fucking cringe. It would turn into the NBA reffing style.
Yes.
Like, there's, not every NBA game, but there's some games where it's just like foul, 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 foul.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you see in most of the end of the games, the last 2 minutes takes 10 to 15 minutes because then they start really going by the book, by the rules, calling all the fouls they see. Maybe in the playoffs it switches a little and they let them play more. But I think the NHL mentality is let them play. So I think it's best they keep it how it currently is.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Look, let's be real. If you guys watch a hockey game and you guys read the rule book, you guys probably would be able to find a penalty on every single shift in a hockey game. There's probably a penalty of some sort from the textbook. And does anybody on this podcast think that this game should be it's a much better game 5-on-5 than it is, completely all power plays? Like, power plays are fun. That's true. But the game is meant to be played 5-on-5. And when you have a game that is just consistently all power plays, it just kind of takes away from the flow of the game. Like, it just kind of takes that away. I just think that I want to see consistency. So if you're gonna call some tight calls in the first period, call it all the way through to the third period. Or if you're gonna call it loose in the first period, call it loose in the third period. Set a standard early and then play it out. But I think that this whole thing, I don't know if you guys remember this, but do you guys remember? Is it Tim Donaghy? He was a NBA ref that
the betting guy.
Yeah. So I think that the NHL reacted the way they did because of that, because of the way that these makeup calls are brought in. The first thing that kind of people thought about is the gambling aspect and how refs can kind of have their hand. I don't think that Tim Peel, the NHL ref, was nefarious in any way compared to Tim Donaghy. But I think that the NHL was just quick to make sure that none of that was happening, especially because gambling is becoming such a growing thing in the NHL. And, it is unfortunate that this guy couldn't finish out his career correctly. I think that Eric's right. He probably should have just been suspended for 5-10 games. We don't want to hear it. We know it happens. You guys see it every game. There's makeup calls. You're like, okay, that is not tripping, but we'll make it up because our team got one earlier. So
question for you, Request.
Yeah.
So Tim Peel is going to retire as a referee after this year. So do you think that played any part in the severity of his suspension? Like, if he was a young ref, I feel like he'd just get like a 10-game suspension kind of thing. But retiring, he's like, I'm done with you. Now you just missed 20-ish games, give or take. And
yeah, I think you're definitely right. I think that definitely had something to do with it. But I honestly think that makes it worse because the guy's been working the league for so long, and he's been such a big part of this league as an official, and players really like the guy. And I think players are pretty taken aback by the fact that this guy was just shut down when he was supposed to retire. And I think that's right. It made the NHL easy to just take him out for the rest of the season because he's retiring anyway, but he's not going to get that final game. He's not going to get that final send off. His legacy ends with him getting fired because he said, I just wanted to make up a call, which we know every ref does. So it's a little unfortunate.
How crazy is that though? That that was put on air. That gets said so many times per game by the referees.
I know. And
it never gets on air. And yes, there was a home run. But the fact of the matter, how is it possible that now it's just on air? Conspiracy?
Ladies and gentlemen, everything that you say can will be used against you, even in life, even in sports. And I think this is just another example of that. But with that, downer of perspective. Thank you, James. I'm done.
Thank you, Tradon. Another good, engaging NHL conversations we just had. And if also randomly on a side note, you guys should check out, if you go on like YouTube, they got like NHL players mic'd up during games, and like they do show all the time. They're talking to the refs. The refs just seem like they're like buddies with everybody.
They are.
Like, oh, I'll get you next time, bud. Sorry, I had a bad call. Sorry. But
Sorry.
yeah, it's like great. Like they all just seem like, I don't know, maybe in the NBA, like they do talk to the refs. Sometimes it's more negative than that though. But yeah, that's me going on a tangent.
I think
guys,
the reason before that, I mean, unlike any other sport in the NHL, in the world, penalties actually affect the time of the game. Like they affect time on the game. So I think penalties have the most impact on a game, just in the case that, it's for 2 whole minutes, you're at a disadvantage. That's a long time in a game like hockey. So yeah. I just think that it means something for the players and the refs to have a good rapport, so that they have that good relationship.
So in soccer, the extra minutes doesn't have to do with penalties.
It does, but
so then soccer's the other sport.
It is. You're right.
And lacrosse has power plays too. But yeah, anyways, you're right, pretty much.
In terms of the major four, we'll talk major here in the United States.
Yeah. All right, guys. When we return, we'll be into our last segment of the week. It's going to be James, the football guy, talking football, of course, when we come back. Everybody, welcome back. We are into the last segment of the week. The football guy, James, is going to talk football as usual. And we are talking NFL draft picks, specifically picks 21 through 32, the important ones. James, why are they important?
To be honest, man, every pick in the first round is important. I mean, in the 7-round draft, the first round is going to be insane. It's stock full of talent. If we've seen anything in the NFL, it's like the first three rounds, you can get a superstar in those 3 rounds. But the first round of itself, it increases your chances exponentially. So we're going to do a mock draft today. We're going to do 21 through 32, like Eric had mentioned. But the guys are going to be trying a little bit hard to get these right, because whoever wins and gets the most right, I'm going to give him $25, maybe 50, maybe 100. I don't know. Hasn't been decided yet. But the better you are, the more money you'll get. So we're going to start off with number 32 of the NFL draft. That's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tradon, who are you drafting?
Okay. Here's the thing about the Tampa Bay. They got all 22 starters coming back. They don't need much. And I think that, I think they're going to add running back Najee Harris. I think that he's just going to slot in as a nice backup, and he's just going to, there's already a strong running back group, and he's just going to be, the guy that comes up after everyone starts to, go by the wayside.
Interesting. Definitely not what I was thinking at all. Alex, what do you got?
Yeah, that's not what I got. Wait, so if how many do I have to get right to get $100? Now I'm curious.
You'll see at the end when we get to number 1. I will tell you.
Okay, cool. So for the Bucks, yeah, Tradon, you're right. They brought all 22 starters back. They don't need a bunch. That typically is what happens when you've just won the Super Bowl. But I'm going to go with Levi Onwuzurike. Nailed it. He's a defensive lineman from Washington. I think that core of especially on the line is a little bit older. He doesn't have to be a starter right away. He can learn and then kind of build into that system. That's what I got going to the Bucks at 32.
Eric.
For the Bucks, 32. I'm also on the defensive side of things. I'm going with the linebacker from Georgia, Azeez Ojulari. He's going to learn from that core group of guys they have now, and just build off of that.
For my pick for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I went with Zaven Collins from Tulsa. He's an outside linebacker. He plays the same position as Jason Pierre-Paul, and as Tradon had mentioned, they returned all their starters. Jason Pierre-Paul is a little bit older though, so he could sit there, learn the ropes, and be a good outside linebacker in the future. Not right now. Tyler, because he's not here. Tyler went with Jason Owen, an edge rusher from Penn State. 31, Kansas City Chiefs. Alex, who are you drafting?
Yeah, we talked about it during the How Do We Fix the Chiefs segment a couple weeks ago. But I'm going Elijah Vera Tucker, offensive lineman from the Trojans down there in Southern California. Someone's got to protect Patrick Mahomes. They did let a couple of their guys leave in free agency / cuts. So Elijah Vera Tucker, USC.
I went with the same exact pick as you. The cool thing about him, he plays both guard and tackle positions, so he can slot in anyone on the line. And he also only allowed 2 hurries last season. That's crazy. Eric, what do you got?
I got an offensive tackle from Notre Dame, Liam Eichenberg, because, like we said, they need good linemen.
Tradon?
I too have an offensive lineman from Oklahoma State, Tevin Jenkins. Can slot in as a tackle or a guard, and he's NFL ready. Let's go.
I like that. Tyler went with Samuel Cosme, an offensive tackle from Texas.
At least we're all on the right page.
Yeah, for sure. Everybody went offensive line. That's awesome. Number 30 in the NFL draft is the Buffalo Bills, a.k.a. Alex's favorite team. So, Alex, who you got going to the Bills?
Okay, first of all, the Rams are my favorite team. Just Josh Allen and our boys. That's just what it is. I am going, and I'm actually not super confident with this one, but I'm going with Travis Etienne, running back from Clemson.
Really?
I know that their offense is legit, and they probably need more help on the defensive side. I'm just not sold on those running backs. And I think Travis Etienne, played with Trevor Lawrence. I think that him matching up with in that Bucs offense in the Bills offense could be deadly.
Eric, what do you got?
Jason Owe, defensive end from Penn State. Just to continue to build their defensive side. They kind of needed a stronger defense, it seemed, when they played the Chiefs. So build that defense.
Tradon?
I have a sneaky one. It might be a steal, but it might be a bit of a stretch. I have Pat Fryermuth from Penn State, his tight end. Instantly he's gonna join that. He's gonna be their number 1 tight end because I think they really need that, and he's gonna bring his big strength is the red zone, and I think that's gonna be a huge push for that offense there.
He wasn't even on my big board for this. That's crazy. That's a sneaky pick for sure. I went with Jalen Phillips, an edge rusher from the U. He was one of the best edge defenders this year, but he's going to slip because he has concussion history. He had 9 sacks last season and hurried the QB 29 times. Like I said, the Bills are set on offense, but they need to improve their defense, and that's where they're going to go. Their defensive line is getting older, so you got to go younger on that aspect. Tyler picked Christian Barmore, a defensive tackle from Alabama. Number 29, the Green Bay Packers. Eric, what do you got?
I got a cornerback from Georgia, Tyson Campbell. They seem to be pretty stacked offensively. And I feel like I've said that a bunch already, so they need to build the defense.
Tradon, what do you got?
Yeah, I agree. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be mad that they're not going to pick a wide receiver in the first round. But I'm going to say from Notre Dame, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, linebacker. He's explosive. He makes an instant impact on the defense scheme that they kind of run, especially the pass rush, and they need help on defense. I like that pick.
I like that one too. Alex?
I went offense. I went with Samuel Cosme. We talked about him earlier, offensive tackle from Texas. I think with David Bakhtiari's injury, they're a little bit weaker up front there. So I think that's maybe where they're going.
I went with a very sneaky pick. I went with Nick Bolton. He's a linebacker. He's projected a 3rd-round pick, but he's a really good linebacker, and the Packers need a linebacker big time. He's not the fastest guy out there, but he's the smartest. He doesn't miss tackles. He's allowed a passing rate of 24. Crazy. He had the most stops in the SEC last year. And then Tyler went with Rondell Moore, a wide receiver from Purdue. So there you go, Tradon. Wide receiver right there. Number 28, the New Orleans Saints. Tradon, what do you got?
Yes, so I think the New Orleans is going to replace Trey Hendrickson with an edge rusher in Gregory Rousseau from Miami. It's going to take the pressure off of the rookie Cameron Jordan. I think that he's going to find his way up in that lineup, and I think he's going to be a huge pick.
Alex?
I went with Jamin Davis, linebacker out of Kentucky. I think same thing on the defensive side. I think, that's what they're kind of struggling with compared to the offense, which even with Drew Brees retiring, still has a lot of weapons. So that's what I went with for the New Orleans Saints.
Eric?
Gregory Rousseau, the D-end from Miami, who you mentioned earlier, I think.
I think Tradon just mentioned him.
Tradon.
That's who I picked.
Like just right now. I went with Caleb Farley, a cornerback from Virginia Tech. The Saints defense was okay last season, but the corners were getting torched constantly. He opted out last season, so he doesn't have any stats. But in 2019, he was the best coverage linebacker there was, or not linebacker, cornerback there was. He had 4 picks. And then Tyler went with Kadarius Toney, another wide receiver from Florida. Tyler's going very wide receiver heavy in this draft.
Really?
Number 27. You need more wide receivers, right?
Yeah.
That's what Tyler says. Number 27, the Baltimore Ravens. Alex, what do you got?
So I went with who you picked for the Bills, with Jalen Phillips, the edge rusher out of Miami. The Ravens, have traditionally been a defensive team. So I think that they, maybe they're not as scared of the concussion issues, and they're going to pick him at number 27. I
like that. Eric?
I got a wide receiver from LSU, Terrace Marshall Jr. Then even more weapons for Lamar Jackson to throw to.
I agree with you there. I also have the same thing with Terrace Marshall Jr. He's a big body, and that's something that the Ravens desperately need. Their best wide receiver is 5'7" in Hollywood Brown. The thing about Terrace Marshall, though, he runs a 4.3 840. Guy's crazy fast, crazy athletic. He had 700 yards last season and 10 touchdowns. And surprise, surprise, Tyler also picked Terrace Marshall Jr., another wide receiver. So 3 wide receivers in a row for Tyler. Shane, what do you got?
Yeah, I have a wide receiver, but I don't have your guy from Ole Miss. We got Elijah Moore. I like his quickness. I think he's going to be a good security blanket for our boy Lamar, who desperately needs that improvement on the wide receiver end.
Love it. Moving on to number 26, we have the Cleveland Browns. Eric, what you got?
I have Elijah Moore. Everything Tradon described, but for the Browns system.
Okay. I actually went with Gregory Rousseau, who you guys said last pick, but the reason being is I don't think he's slipping. 26 is far enough for him to slip. Anything more than that, it's going to be a travesty. He's going to work really well with Myles Garrett and Takk McKinley. That's going to be a good defensive line if they can get him. Tradon, what do you got?
For Miami, I have Jalen Phillips, the defensive line. I think that, you're just going to keep boosting that up. He's also pretty versatile. He can play the edge. He can also play the inside. And I think that's that's a big deal. And I think that he's going to help with that offensive line that is already pretty solid.
Alex?
So I went with Terrace Marshall Jr. for this pick, not whatever was the last pick. I think that OBJ could be out. There's been rumors that they've been talking about trading him. So I think that the Browns might snag him a pick earlier than what you guys were projecting.
Okay. And then Tyler went with Jamin Davis, a linebacker from Kentucky. 25, the Jacksonville Jaguars, who also have the number 1 pick. It's crazy. Tyler, Tradon, what do you got?
Let's get this is a preview for what I think is going to be the first pick. Let's get Lawrence, a wide receiver, in Kadarius Toney from Florida. I think that those two are just going to develop a good chemistry right from the get-go. He's also very speedy, and I think that's going to help that budding offense.
With an Urban Meyer-led offense, that's going to be insane to watch. Alex?
So I agree on the position. I disagree on the player. I think it's that Rondale Moore from Purdue. He will remind Urban Meyer of Percy Harvin, who played at Florida with Urban Meyer, teaming him up with probably Trevor Lawrence. We'll see when we get to number 1 if I pick something different. But that's who I got going to the Jags.
I got Zaven Collins, the guy you mentioned earlier, the linebacker from Tulsa. Build the defense.
So for my pick at 25, because I believe that Trevor Lawrence will become that number 1 overall pick, I went with Tevin Jenkins, a tackle. You got to protect your quarterback, especially if it's somebody as good as this guy. He's a will imposer. If he slips at 25, that's going to be insane because he's probably the second best offensive lineman in this draft. He only allowed 4 pressures on 211 pass sets last season. The guy's crazy good. He's a massive human being. And at 25, Tyler has Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, a linebacker from Notre Dame. That was really hard to pronounce.
Yeah, I said it earlier.
Yeah,
It's a good thing Tyler wasn't here.
Yep, Tyler would have probably stuttered it out, but that's fine. Number 24, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Eric, what do you got?
Najee Harris, running back from Alabama. Who I don't even remember who their running back was this last year, but
James Conner.
yeah, he didn't do that good, I don't think, because I didn't hear his name a lot. But I also didn't watch a lot of Steelers, but they need a running back to build the offense. Steelers.
I agree with you there. I also said the same thing with Najee Harris. So we've agreed on two things now. James Conner is not returning this season, which means that running back room is pretty much empty with a bunch of guys that have no names whatsoever. Like they don't produce. He almost had 1,500 yards rushing alone last season and also had 26 touchdowns. Tradon, what do you got?
I got linebacker from Georgia, Azeez Ojulari. I think that might be a risky pick because I think I assume he's going to fall this far back, but I think the Steelers continue to find, their gems on the line. And this is just another one of those.
Alex?
I've got Carlos Basham, the edge rusher from Wake Forest. I think same thing. The Steelers are going to load up on defense. I have Najee Harris going earlier, which is why he doesn't fall to them. But I think the Steelers go full defense.
Is Najee Harris your first running back off the board?
Mine?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. For number 24, Tyler has Jalen Mayfield, an offensive tackle from Michigan. Number 23, my second favorite team in the NFL right now, that's the New York Jets. Tradon, what do you got?
From Florida State, Asante Samuel Jr., cornerback. He's a big playmaker, and I think he's gonna help in that Robert Saleh defense. He's gonna adjust nicely, and I think that with that coach, as your new mentor, watch, this guy's gonna be big time.
Alex?
I agree. I think not with the player, but I agree that with Robert Saleh as the new head coach, they're going to pick defense here since they're most likely going to pick offense earlier in the draft. I have Zaven Collins, the linebacker from Tulsa, you guys have mentioned earlier. He's super athletic and he can fly around on that defense for Saleh there in New York.
Eric?
Travis Etienne, the running back from Clemson. Or however the fuck you say his last name, because James is laughing at me. But their running backs have just been old. Frank Gore, Le'Veon Bell, and they haven't done shit. And Darnold needs a guy to help take pressure off him. You need a fresh, young dude to help run the ball for him.
I agree with you once again, Eric. That's ridiculous. But I also went with Travis Etienne. That's how you pronounce his name. Etienne.
I was close.
To Alex's point that Robert Saleh is the defensive guy, and so he thought they were going to pick defense, and I disagree because of that reason. I think because Robert Saleh is such a good defensive coach, he can make do what he has. But they're going to be running a Kyle Shanahan offense, and a Kyle Shanahan offense is predicated on having a good, explosive pass-catching running back, and that is what Travis Etienne is. The guy had 580.
Tradon said defense too, just saying. You don't have to
just throw me
so
you and Tradon. Sorry. My bad. Tradon, your point was also terrible, just so you know.
Yeah, come on, Tradon.
Travis Etienne had 588 yards receiving, which led the nation. So he was the best pass-catching running back there was in the nation last season. That's why I think he'll do well on the Jets. Tyler had Caleb Farley, a defensive back from Virginia Tech. Moving on, number 22, we got the Tennessee Titans. Alex, what do you got?
I have Greg Newsome II, a cornerback out of Northwestern. The Titans lost a lot of their cornerback depth during this free agency period, and I think that they need help out there. So I've got Greg Newsome II.
I agree with you there as well. I have the same guy. The Titans run a very zone-heavy defensive scheme, and Greg Newsome is a very good zone corner. He only allowed 12 receptions last season for 93 yards. That was it all season long. Only give up 93 yards. Lockdown corner. Eric, what do you got?
I have Greg Newsome II. Everything you just said and everything Alex just said, I agree.
I love it. Tradon.
Wow, I feel like an idiot. From Purdue, I got Rondell Moore, wide receiver. I think you need someone to replace Corey Davis, and I think his explosiveness is gonna is going to be huge for that offense.
At 22, Tyler picked Rashad Bateman, wide receiver from Minnesota. And last but not least, we got the Indianapolis Colts at 21. Eric, who you got?
Kwity Paye, defensive end from Michigan. Build a defense.
This is ridiculous, but I agree with you once again. Like, what the hell, man? Kwity Paye is going to go the Colts. The Colts lost a lot of defense this year. D'Amico Autry went to a division rival, and Justin Houston has not been re-signed, which is leaving DeForest Buckner on that line all by himself. So draft this guy, edge defender. He's the most athletic edge defender in the draft. He hasn't put it all together. He needs a lot of polish, but to be as good as he is with as little refinement as he has, it says a lot about how much better he'll be if he can put it all together. Trade, what do you got?
One of my favorite teams in the NFL, from Penn State, Jason Owe. He's an edge rusher. His athleticism and his grit and his just pure straight athleticism, like I said, is going to be the key for this. And I think he's a perfect fit for this Indianapolis team.
Alex?
I went a totally different direction. I went with Elijah Moore, the wide receiver out of Ole Miss. I think they want to pair a quick, speedy guy with Carson Wentz, who they, for some reason, traded for because he's Carson Wentz for whatever reason. But I think they're going to need kind of a blanket for him, I guess.
Yeah, a safety blanket. I like it.
Yeah, safety. Thank you.
You're welcome. Tyler went with Aziz Ujulari, an edge from Georgia, at 21 to the Indianapolis Colts. And so that, ladies and gentlemen, is the first part of a 3-part draft series. Stay tuned and see who gets number 1.
Thank you, James. That was that'll probably actually make me pay attention now to the NFL draft. And now I just learned a little more about all these players and I do like how you compared it with what we said teams needed, because I kind of forgot what I said teams needed, but you reiterating what we said helps me actually pick the right guys for these teams to go to, if that makes sense. But everybody, that is what we have for you this week. Once again, Tyler was greatly missed. He couldn't make it. But, as usual, we want to thank all you listeners for continuing to stick with us. It's 41 weeks deep so far. We continue to grow and get better and learn from you guys as well. Check the Instagram, check the Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, of course, where, we mainly throw all of our stuff. James has been doing great with all of our Instagram videos. Like I always say, the sports world is flourishing. The world is spinning. Baseball's full go. Tomorrow night is Baylor versus Gonzaga for the final bracket game. This coming weekend is the Masters tournament. The NHL trade deadline is next week. The NBA has almost 20 games left. Shit is winding down, and it's about to get interesting. And keep listening, and we'll keep you guys tuned in with everything going on. Thank you.